Can we get this on Spotify? No, sadly. It is on YouTube, though. Good evening, everybody. So, again, just to reiterate, tonight is going to be a bit of a short night in terms of news. And yeah, when we should get Kev to have a collection of songs on Spotify. It'd be fun. Once we get through the news, I have no idea how much there is. It's going to be improv covering that. But once we get through the news, we're going to go right to brainstorming. If you don't remember, 2 weeks ago, and forgive me, I've had a bit of a throat cold, still getting over. The 2 weeks ago, we said that we'd put a poll up and see whether or not you guys wanted us to cover mechanics suggestions and what those would look like. This is open. Anyone can suggest anything. We're just going to kind of be looking at how would that look to actually be implemented. And is it possible, setting aside the whole Alex has zero interest in changing the game beyond more surface level changes, just theorizing, having a ball. That's what the goal is tonight. So with that started, let's go ahead and just start skimming through what news there has been over the last few weeks. So if you what's anything specific that jumps out at anybody? The last show for reference was on the 18th, so anything after that. Borg's Assisted Loot Liberation Service has attacked Polaris, who rebranded to the New Polar Order. That was funny. I think that Mom's Friendly Robotics Corp or whoever, there was that whole screenshot of Borg being spam pinged with the middle finger. Cam members have begun ghosting to start drilling Polaris. That's well earned, in my opinion. Not really much micro news. I will get to that, Damien. Thank you for reminding me. I will have a little bit to talk about when it comes to business tonight. Something that I know everybody absolutely adores. So there was also the day after the show, there was a DDoS. And there was a lot that went on with that. There were the attacks, and then they froze the API, and this threw a lot of bots out of whack for the duration of the freeze. Fortunately for anyone who relies on automation, it didn't last long. The Cloudflare is on, but the API lock is now gone, which great for anyone who loves it. But data visualization, the tab has been broken since last month. Now it's fixed now, but the theory was that this whole DDoS was being used as part of a duplication, particularly for food, just to get that back on, get whoever was using it as an ability to cheat food into the game. That was fixed by Village, who unfortunately is no longer playing the game. He's quitting. The Village is out. It takes a village to raise somebody, and the Village is gone. He's gone. He's still going to remain as a dev. He's still going to help around, but in terms of playing, he's out of here. Alex put out a limited edition extra donation deal in which you could get $400 million, a year of VIP, a limited edition Nation Achievement, and a limited edition Nation Award. And the Black Friday sale took it from, well, it put it at $50 from the base value of $90. I did not come anywhere near to ever clicking that button. there. I don't know if any of you were interested, but I was not. That's way too much for anything involving a browser game, particularly for 400 million alone. Now, if you're going to talk like 4 billion, okay, I'll talk with you on that. Oh, neither have I, Kills. And I include buying Discord Nitro on that. But, well, yeah, that's the issue. That's the Sleeping Ninja. That's the point right there is he's not willing to radically restructure things, right? Or at least make major changes that would require significant recoding. But in the meantime, fork over your cash. So if it was 4 billion, okay, that's a little more understandable, right? That's a significant boost. That's still a city for, I don't know if it's a city for Fenris anymore, but for most people, even upper tier people, that's still a city or close to it. And that's significant progress for lower tier people. That's through probably what? Isn't that through City 20? City 21 at least? But that's the point, Sleeping Ninja. What city count are you? 31. And it's still 2 to 3 cities for you. At that level. It's much more useful than here's 400 million. So Prefontaine posted the dev team stuff. The whale still, but they do whatever. You can never understand the whales. Prefontaine posted the dev team November update, but we'll get to that later. Has there been anything new here? Oh, yes. So we are finally past Nation ID 500,000. That is, wow, just that's a lot of nations that have been simulated over time. It's a massive landmark for the game. And I do, with all of its faults, it still does deserve it. So you also have Crusaders of the Holy Boogaloo. They got their bank looted. Rest in peace. This was funny. C32 Nation just blew up a bunch of projects to buy VDS. He was a confirmed multi, but that doesn't matter. That's not going to change anything. A C32 Nation deleted 5 projects just to buy one, and then rebought one of them anyway. Hey, people are silly. What are you going to do? Sam Cooper posted, for those of you who don't know, he's very prominent in ARG, commenting on the current war, the strategies and all that. The summary that was posted in Ron, and this is what I'm going to go off of because I didn't read it, so I missed something. And what's Hatebi or whatever your name is, congratulations, it's been butchered. If you're still here and you're in ARG, you know more about what he was talking about than any of us do. So you can add to what I'm saying. Soldiers are limited use in the current war meta. Tanks are either incredibly useful or they're useless, depending upon if you're winning or losing. Wars are always limited to 3 steps. Find as many people as possible for your blitz and 0 planes, and then eventually all other units, and then eat nukes for a month and peace out. If there's anything else, we can have our wonderful people who read the forums let me know, but I think that's an accurate summary. I mean, planes really are the top level. I think once an alliance gains, and somebody can try to, I mean, if there's an alternative argument, I'm open to hearing it. But once one side gets aerial supremacy, it's pretty much, the war is done. Like, once you see one side's at 80% militarization of planes and the other side's at 50, In most cases, the side with 80 comes out on top unless they're just militarily incompetent. So I think, as some people have suggested, like making it so that the ships are ridiculously expensive, they should be worth more. Making it so that they can attack planes would be pretty nice. But we can get to that later. That's part of our mechanics suggestion. So, what's the big news that's been missed? Nothing really. Just stat stuff. Midgard and Eclipse are leading, but that's to be expected. I mean, they're giants. Why wouldn't they? So, is there anything that you all would like me to comment on that I have not, other than the business? I will get to the business. Anything you'd like me to comment on that I have not, or anything that I have commented on that you think needs additional elaboration? I am, as well. This is a show run for you, the people. Grimmy, well, have you set anything up with that yet? I don't know. I told you, ping me if you need me. I haven't checked the server. That's how I avoid going insane. Yeah, you cleaned it up, though, definitely. I just will see where you take that. Is there anything really new with the treaty web? Not that I see, right? Multi-dumps. No idea what you're talking about. Completely honest. Oh, really? 50? Oh, is that by... Yeah, but if they're that easily catchable, then I don't... I mean, they should be able to stop that. Who do you think is winning the propaganda war? Define propaganda. If you're talking about who I've seen put out more media or whatever, there's no contest because I haven't seen anything. If you're talking about who's winning the moral high ground, as always, well, I can't say that. From what I have seen, would say the moral high ground goes to TKR and Cataclysm. Purely because, and I'm just that off of my opinion, which is not, Lord knows it's not P&W's opinion. My opinion is that you had, oh gosh, I don't want to get it wrong. I want to make sure my events are accurate. So let me make sure that they are. I don't want to start spouting off nonsense because although it's fun, it gets to be problematic. So yes, Midgard declared war on Withheld. Fantastic. That's a war. Cataclysm jumped in on Midgard. Had everything stopped there, everything, I would absolutely give Midgard the moral superiority. It didn't. The Syndicate dropped their ally after, from what leaks have shown that have not been refuted, after showing interest in declaring on Midgard. And then shortly thereafter, Eclipse jumps in and hits Cataclysm and Withheld. That is what allows, in my mind, withheld and kata to play White Knight. Yeah, that I saw that city score, so we'll get to that in a second. But that's my opinion. That's what I think on that. So there you go, Britannian. But yeah, it does. It does. Sleeping Ninja. Well, speaking of how wars go, you can still do tank flashes that are relatively effective if done right. Build back up to 20,000 plus tanks, down declare and wreck players with low tank counts on the winning team. Immediate sell off. But ultimately, how effective is that? What are you going to get? Right now, let's say you're able to take ground superiority. At most, you're going to get what? 3 blows in on their planes with tanks, and that's not even going to do much in total. Well, it might. I don't know. I haven't hit someone with 20,000 plus tanks, but it's a net damage win, but it's not sustainable, particularly not against a competent opponent. Now, if you're fighting someone who's just mass baging, absolutely, use that strategy, but it's not. Yes, that's why they're called flashes, but at the same point in time, if it's not going to get you anywhere, it's not really worth doing. It's just blowing money. Does that net damage, does that factor in the cost or what you lose out of selling off the tanks? I'm just asking. I genuinely don't know. Because yeah, I would definitely look at adding that in mathematically, because if you're losing more than you're doing in damage, well then yeah, it depends on the outsized, it depends on how much you're dealing. Where else was it? Yeah, I did city scores going back to 100. Why? Who's been complaining? And why do they matter? All this is going to do is get the fight back on for 50. Like 75 was in the middle. It was a compromise that nobody liked, which is how compromises are supposed to work. Well, exactly. But that's why I'm at why? Why is it going up? There was the huge fight. Should it be 50? Should it be 100? They did 75, which was in between, and made everybody angry. That's how you're supposed to do things. Everyone's supposed to give a little. They got the people that wanted 50 got it a little lower. The people that wanted 100 got to keep it semi high. By throwing it back to 100, you're just going to re aggravate the people that wanted it at 50. I don't know. Maybe I know nothing. In fact, that's probably the most likely thing. The fun thing that I've just been looking at is how the top like 15 has changed. Because you've had like UPN is at 18. You have people have just dropped out. The score, and no, it might not happen, but the fact that it's even being considered, it's automatically an aggravation and an escalation. Automatically. So I don't like it personally. I think that there's a lot that's messed with, and I think that that's the whole issue, isn't it? Is that people they need to sit down and listen to what players, not whales, players want. There's a bit of a difference between the two. So whales are players, but players are not whales. Players don't know, they don't, Zig. You're right. That's the problem. But the other issue is we give them to, yes, it is, but when your players want, for instance, Zig, if your players are telling you we want A, B, C, and D, these are the four different perspectives we have on issue one. And the devs look at that, and by some miracle, they get the idea, let's implement option O, which nobody suggested and nobody wanted. It's not the players that are the problem there. And that's a lot of what we're getting. It was you need to diss them anyways. That's called, we just community unity. That's what we need. And I do think there's a point being made in that perhaps we have a more selective representation on the dev team. I don't know. I haven't looked. I might just be pulling things out of my rear. But is there as a diverse group of views or a willingness to listen to a diverse group of views in the dev team as there are proportionate to diversity amongst the player base? Well, because look at what's come out of the dev team, Zig. They've been incredibly unresponsive to what people ask. There's that too, but I would just not that I would ever be wanted on there because I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'd just flat out say no because of what has been widely said in terms of there are a few people who dictate which ideas get heard and which ideas don't. I don't know. It's my opinion. I am going to jump to business because business is one thing in this game that I can check on and I can talk about with really no rival. So, for those of you who don't know what BCF is an acronym for Black Crown Financial. This past month, the month of November, for their operations, they made $209 million in gross profit. They lost $1,788,000,000 for a net loss of $1.579 billion for November alone. That is astronomical. Damien, basically covering failures. No. I've said time and time again that business itself is not inherently flawed in this game. The community and the treatment around business is what is inherently flawed. If one person could run every aspect of a business who had pure and the best intentions, there would never be a problem. The problem comes from those that they interact with. Not necessarily never, but very close to. Because where the problem comes in with business is not always in the management. A great deal of it now does come from the management. I would suspect anywhere from 60 to 80 to even perhaps 90% of all businesses that are run in this game are run with accounting that would put them in prison in the real world. I believe that. I know of several major businesses who have massive accounting flaws that I have pointed out and that I myself could utilize. Yes, well, it depends. Kiwi, you're fair. But I know that if I was, for instance, if I was the type of person to exploit such accounting mishaps, I could, by simple monetary movements, and I will get to you in a second, because that's a brilliant point about Tate. But by simple monetary movements, not by scamming them, but by putting money, by giving them money in a certain account and then withdrawing it, or do it. It's a very simple thing on how accounting is set up in some of these businesses. I could create such a negative loop in how they pay out profits that I could get them to pay out their entire shareholder capital as profits, withdraw my own funds, and leave them bankrupt without a single dollar left to their company. I can do it. I know how to do it with several of these companies at any time because of the accounting mishaps in how they do things. So that is absolutely part of the problem. The other part of the problem is in the community they interact with. When you have people that intentionally target businesses, and then you have alliances and other entities that refuse to enforce a positive, I guess, view, or be willing to accept that. For instance, let me put it this way. If I go in and steal $1 billion from a business, not through this accounting flaw, that's their own idiocy. I go in, I take a loan, I pretend I'm going to use it for this, and I walk away and never repay it. That's what happened to Black Crown Financial, and we'll get back to that in a second. That should not just be shrugged off by my alliance. People should not look at that and say, he stole $1 billion. Yeah, but he did it from a bank, so it's okay. It's still an immoral move. You should not be willing to just, oh yeah, we'll give him another grant because why not? That's the problem, Kiwi, is that it's cool. It's accepted. If you steal it, if you go and rob a bank, you're not just enriching yourself. You're a hero. And people will say, oh, no. There is zero consequences when it comes from the general community. There's no dislike. There's no punishment from an alliance. There's no exclusion from an alliance. It does not affect them whatsoever except to give them prestige. And that is the inherent flaw with banking and business. That is the inherent problem. It's not management. Management can be corrected. It's not that they're starting businesses to scam people. It's that someone with the purest intentions will blunder on their own and will most certainly be screwed over by everyone around them because there's no structure to it. So back to BCF. The major problem here comes from a scam by Nomad worth $1 billion. But the other thing that you have to recognize, trusting no one is the only way to win in this game. So the other thing that you have to realize is even without that $1 billion, operating costs were already $788 million. 572 million of which were employee expenses. The most of this went to dev pay and paying traders to stay on retainer so they wouldn't go trade with somebody else. It is still an astronomical expense, but you have to, I say this without attempting to criticize Black Crown Financial in the sense that it's a terrible business. That's not my intention at all. But when the plan is not to avoid or minimize losses, but to use your own national revenue to offset said losses, there is a problem. When your business requires not just the occasional cash infusion to keep it flowing, but a cash infusion every single month, that is a problem. For those of you that would like to understand why I'm a little more, I guess you would call it, hesitant on BCF as a continued business, why I don't necessarily know if it'll remain around for a while. I went ahead and did some math the other day. Over the last 6 months, the last half a year, Black Crown Financial, this is over 6 months, this is excluding a much larger loss from the month before, last 6 months, the business has lost a net total of at least $5.25 billion. Factor in the month before, and that doubles. Business, Zig, business losses from one business. Over the last 6 months, the business has turned a profit 3 of the 6 months. The average net profit was $201.5 million. The other 3 months were net negative. The average net loss on those months, negative $1.95 billion. Nearly 10 times the average net profit for the other 3 months. Kiwi, he's been Daxus for a long time. He's been Daxus since I knew him back when Swing was around. So he used to play before, but I don't know what he used to be, what his username used to be. Where are they getting the money? I would like to make it clear that I am only speculating. You should not take this as truth. You should not take it as fact. You should not use this in your view of Black Crown Financial, soon to be Bank of Orbis? I would suspect it's twofold. The first, Daxis's Nation. He has poured in the month of November alone, $800 million to help offset the loss. If he is continually pouring his national revenue into the business, that is quite possibly the only way that it can remain even close. Although with the size of these losses, that is, I don't think it's sustainable, even if he pours every dime. The other thing you have to, well, Zig, because the business hasn't declared bankruptcy yet, he's still running it. So that's why. Where the money is coming from, the only thing I could think of that allows operations to continue would be the automated accounts. He has money from people who are using BCF's automated accounts, their automated deposit and withdrawal. Billions and billions and billions in value. Like Huckleberry said, Huckleberry has said something like 22 billion. I'm saying at least 10 billion at minimum, absolute minimum. So there's probably an ease of ability for the company to cover lower level losses, which is what these are. You can throw 5 billion away if you have 10 billion that you can use to cover that while you pour your nation back in to make it come back. And I'm not, again, saying this to be negative about the business. I'm talking about this on a factual basis. Now, again, that is speculation that account money is playing into it. But where else does the money from loans come from? That would be a question I would have to say you ask him, because I certainly don't know. The other thing about business is I am back. I am not just back, I am back as what I used to be. I am running 3 separate businesses at the moment, technically 4. A 5th is on the way, and a new program is opening tomorrow. For those of you that have ever had any concerns about, oh, well, how am I going to pay this loan while at war? Zig, there are dozens. You're way out of the curve, man. There is, I am starting a new program that, oh, go for it. I keep nothing on hand. No, I'm a raider, Sleeping Ninja. You will not get a dime of investor money off of my nation. So go for it. Come on, let's tango. The program that is being launched is very simple. Well, I'm charitable from time to time. That's what happens. Checking systems, something that I would think people would have come up with, but nobody's ever thought to implement. I will not give away how it is done, but it's an incredibly easy way of transferring money from an account to pay off your services. Now, granted, none of you are going to care because, well, except for maybe a couple people who are involved in business, but none of you are ultimately going to care because none of you use business. Not for loans, you don't buy services, etc. None of that is relevant to you. But to those that are involved in that aspect of the community, there is a new ability. There's using having your money in an account that you can more or less write a check, not necessarily the same way you do it in the real world, but for the purposes of the system, we call it writing a check. And another business will take said check and use that as payment. That is uh, quite a valuable asset. And that is something that I'm looking to expand. I had practically the entire business world on board pre-launch. Three of them have decided to actually follow through with their commitment, which I was laughing about earlier because as a business owner, your entire reputation, Huckleberry, you can back me up on this because you work with me and you know my reputation in business is the only reason people still talk to me. Your reputation is your business, and your business is your reputation. If you no, I'm talking about in the game, and in this sector, your business is your reputation, and your reputation is your business. And how do I get people to show up? Zig, I've been able to raise 5 billion in a day before. It's a matter of contacts and persuasion. The to break your word, to say, for instance, that yes, I'm on board with this, or yes, this is what I'm going to do, and then not show up when you have multiple days' notice is a very great way to alienate yourself within the community. And it's fascinating that so many people are doing it. Now, maybe it's because it's during the week and people activate over the weekend. I highly doubt it. So I had to rant about that for a minute. But yes, ultimately, I don't fault businesses. I fault the people that attack businesses. And Borg said it very well. Going after and intentionally scamming a business, you are intentionally working to destroy something that somebody else has put their time and effort in and finds fun. That is my ultimate objection to it. It's not that people don't like it. Absolutely hate it if you don't like business. And then do what other people don't do what other people do. Don't interact with it. You do not have to make it a crusade to ruin everyone else's time because you are upset. That's something we see in the real world, and I don't think people like it that much. I'm on board with Zig. It would absolutely kill business, but I am 110% on board with Zig. Kill offshores. It would absolutely destroy business, and it would destroy quite a few other things. But it's a brilliant way forward. And I'm 100% on board with it. And offshores, outlaw them. I'll be on that train all day. Go for it, Zig. It'll never happen, but if you get that to be implemented, you're a hero to the community. I think that wraps up my tirade. Is there anything else that you guys would like to hear from me about before we get into the fun stuff? Anything at all about politics and war? Yes. I see it. TAFE. That's right. I said I'd get back to you. Thank you for reminding me. Business after TAFE has died. Yes. But that's for a couple of reasons. And it's not all related to Tafe. I didn't like Tafe being around when it was around, and I still think killing it was a good idea. I'll tell you why. When you have one entity that owns 90% of the banking community around it, one person is making the decisions for 20 or 30 different businesses. That's not 20 or 30 different businesses. That's one business. Maybe it's one business with a lot of subsidiaries, but it's one business. Tate's accounting was also very sketchy. They had no defense for it at the time. I've seen none since. What really pushed me over the top was that whole, if you're going to kill the market value of our shares, yes, Zig, that's absolutely right, but wrong at the same time. And I'll get to that in 1 second. Where was I? Yes, I did, and I was invited to be in alliance with him, and I refused on that basis. When the Taste crash was occurring, and they never really would have crashed had they not agitated people to the extent that they did. What set me off was, fine, if you're going to trade our shares that we say are worth $1,000 at $600, then fine, that's the book value. We're just devaluing everybody's shares. Screw all of you. There it is. I was the business reporter for, nobody's going to remember this, Orbis News Network. No one here should remember that name. If you do, congratulations, you're out of your mind. I was the business lead at that time. That is what set me off publicly. I'll admit, from the day I joined, I did not like Tafe, and I was out for blood. I'll admit that. It's in my blood to upset the natural order of things. That's who I am. That's part of why my businesses have been able to recruit investors. Is because I naturally try to upset the order of things and innovate. That's what I did. That's why I received invitations to be with the Swing and that kind of stuff. It's what I did. And so naturally, because I am very ambitious when it comes to something that I enjoy doing. Business is something I enjoy doing. And so I love taking the lead on that. Tafe was, you either joined them and became a subsidiary, you were a figurehead to your own business and you let them own all the shares, or you said no to them and they squeezed you out. The only alternative to Tafe was a group like Bank Lumiere. And guess what happened to them? They were 20% owned by Tafe. There was no business that Tafe's fingers were not in. And it came naturally to me to want to upset that monopoly or replace that monopoly. So I said I would do it. I made a promise to myself when I joined the business industry, and I moved on. What came to a head with Tafe was they were terrible at public opinion. They controlled too much. And Green was not able, and yes, I do pronounce it Green. Some of you will pronounce it Greeny. I don't care. I'm pronouncing it the butchered way. He was unable to point to why and where he had the money to buy up 80% of every new enterprise and then value and then just sell the last 10 to 20%. He had no argument that stood up. If I'm missing it, please point it out to me, but I saw no argument that stood up. There was a very large lack of any sort of financial transparency from behind the scenes. We saw the financial statements. There was very little substance to them. That is one thing that has changed for the better. People engage in financial statements that show a great deal more now. Huh. Can you still hear me? It says I'm disconnected. So if I'm not talking. Well, sorry for those of you on the recording. You'll have to give me 1 second. We're going to go ahead actually and pause it about here. And we're back. Good. So, where was I? Where did I cut off? It was about Tate. Oh, yes. That's one positive thing that's come out of Tate. There's a lot more financial transparency from companies than there was prior. So I think ultimately it was just it was a phony company. Yeah, you got that backward there. It's not defending, it would be prosecuting. But Arctic, so I will take full blame for what happened with Tate because I indirectly caused it. Arctic DM'd me, and I will actually go ahead and look and see if I can find. I have the old group chat. Hold on. Let me get to this. So, Arctic, and he reached out to me with some concerns. I was still on speaking terms with Daraj at the time. This was after Ben Jalom, his leave. And Daraj was in charge of Swing, which was by now a fairly tall empire. They're the ones that ran the Orbit Stock Exchange. If any of you remember Toes, I highly doubt any of you did. But we'll get to that later. So the whole thing was essentially it turned into. I'll contend that, Epi. I'll contend that shortly. But they Arctic reached out to me. Daraj had been expressing some concerns, and he was also the head of the chief competitor of Tate. So he was a natural inclusion. I put him and Arctic together. Not that they wouldn't have eventually spoken anyways. I just accelerated the timeline. And that's when you began seeing there was the planning. We reviewed Arctic's posts exposing Tate or whatever. You remember the 3 series of leaks or whatever? the 3 different days that he did. And it was on. Everything from there was a coordinated action by a committee dedicated to taking down Tate. That's what it was. So, Toes, let me jump to that really quickly. Toes itself was not, the companies on there were not necessarily overvalued. They generally traded at the same level they did beforehand. The primary problem was that over time, the prices did inflate slightly. The other problem was a lack of separation, too much centralization there. They didn't pay attention. Well, it wasn't even centralization, it was just idiotic accounting. Again, management failed them. And then you had the primary issue actually with every automated stock exchange, and the reason I no longer believe there should be one, in that it takes away the more human aspect of it, but it also, if people aren't trading, it looks like, oh, the stock exchange is dead. Because the exchange itself is a business. Their job is to promote trading. People don't always want to trade. You can go months without having an actual transaction of shares. Yeah, I remember that. That was a hell of a trial. So stock exchanges are real. They just, they're not conducive to anything. I was there, Avatar Patrick. Why are you not including me? I was on the jury. I was up to hell. Oh yeah, I was. Which is entirely part of why is it Furwolf? It's entirely part of why he's vindicated partially in calling it a trial. Is because I was part of blowing Tate up and then I was on the jury. Granted, I didn't say anything that everyone else wasn't already saying and agreeing to in that chat, but I still was technically biased. So he's, realistically, did I have any influence? No, because the one thing I was thinking on fighting on, I caved to the general consensus. But everyone else already came to the conclusion without me. So in that sense, no, there was no rigging. But in the sense of, there were already people on that jury that knew what they wanted the result to be, absolutely it was rigged. I've talked for long enough. We've gone for nearly an hour. That's twice the time I wanted to. We're going to get to the fun stuff now. I'm done talking about this. So, who has an idea, an actual idea, and they want to start? I know there we go. I saw. All right. Hebi, go ahead. You post it and I don't care how long it is. We'll go through as many ideas as we can. That's fine. Oh boy. Okay. So, oh yeah, this is gonna be a while. Oh no, we're not doing stuff. We're just suggesting dev things that will never ever actually happen. Um, do we have? We do. We have. Zig. It's just discussion. It's not actual thinking. It's just BSing. Is that all of it? Or is there another message coming? Oh, there's another message. And it's done. Okay. So, starting from the top, you had, it was the policy, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You had the idea of additional policies, from war policies to domestic policies, that unlock with specific achievements. And these provide additional or better boosts than existing policies. Is that correct? Or just other boosts, not necessarily better? They're upgraded versions of the existing ones with either better upsides or lesser downsides. Okay. So here, we're gonna go through all of these. I assume this is the you have the achievement and then the upgraded policy and its effects, correct? Yes, that's how you have it formatted. Okay. So the not necessarily a project research tree, Zig, just expand. You have like advanced urban planning and then metropolitan planning. Do like, advanced missile silo or something. It's not that hard in terms of just adding another project. Alex has been dying to add projects for forever. Um, so we have our achievement name for the first achievement is destructive. Well, on the attrition war policy, win a war using only missiles and nukes. The new policy is super attrition. All attacks do 15% more damage, which now includes missiles and nukes. The thoughts category here was pretty straightforward damage buff, including missiles and nukes lets both sides of a war get more use out of it. The achievement name, slow and steady. Well, on the turtle war policy, win a war after 50 turns have passed. The new policy, super turtle, take 15% less infra damage from all attacks, which would now include missiles and nukes. And the thoughts are that it's the same pretty much as attrition. It's the counter to it. I think these are both fairly, there's nothing intuitive about them. It's fairly explanatory. The achievement, TKO. While on the Blitzkrieg policy, win 3 wars within the same turn. The upgraded policy, Super Blitzkrieg. For the first 24 turns or 48 hours after switching, deal 15% more infra damage and casualties in offensive ground battles, airstrikes, and naval battles, in addition to the regular effect. Thoughts? Blitz is the worst war policy in the game and sees virtually no use as is. If you get slotted right before a turn change while on this policy, you can be airstruck 6 times over the course of a few minutes, increasing the damage to units done by a flat 5%, and doubling its active time may make it more worthwhile. King of the Castle. While on Fortress, win a war after fortifying 3 times. The new policy, Super Fortress. 24 turns or 48 hours after switching, decrease infra damage and casualties in defensive ground battles, airstrikes, and naval battles by 15% in addition to regular effects. Thoughts? Fortress is already the meta war policy. This buff actually decreases the motivation to run it at all times during peace, as switching to it shortly before being hit now lets you parry a blitz if timed well. Blitzkrieg still has the inherent advantage, as perfectly timing your switch to a fortress before a blitz would be rather hard and can be waited out if the offensive party chooses to. Lots of potential for interactions with blitz. Is there anything that comes out of that currently? Any thoughts? Any suggestions? Any disagreements? Anything at all about those 4 war policy changes? Nothing that I'm seeing. Okay. Opulent. Well, on the Moneybags war policy, win a war with more than $100 million on your nation. Unlocks super Moneybags. Decrease loot stolen by 50%. The thoughts. It's a slight increase from its usual 40%. It's already a fantastic war policy and doesn't need much help. The achievement. Swashbuckler. While on the pirate war policy, win a war without possessing any units other than soldiers. The new policy is super pirate. Now takes 50% more loot. The thought, it's the same as Moneybags. It's a nice little buff to raiders hitting targets not using Moneybags. The achievement, tactical. While on the tactician war policy, win a war using less than 30 maps, which can be done but is incredibly difficult. Super tactician. Defensive espionage operations are now only 5% more likely to be unsuccessful. This one is already insanely good. Instead of increasing its upside, this just decreases its inherent downside to a third of what it currently is. The achievement, divine. While on the Guardian war policy, win a war with 20 or less resistance remaining. Super Guardian, now only lose 10% more loot. Same as Tactician, the downside is only halved on this one, as losing loot is arguably more impactful than a slight debuff to Spy's odds. Achievement, Invisible. While on the Covert war policy, launch 5 successful spy ops in a row against someone you're at war with. Super Covert. Offensive spy ops are 20% more successful. Thoughts? It's a simple 5% increase. The spy war policies have a solid niche as it is. Achievement, OPSEC. Well, on the Arcane war policy, gather intelligence 5 times in a row without getting caught. Super Arcane defensive spy ops are 20% more successful, the same as Covert. So I think that's all fairly self-explanatory. Again, anyone have any questions? Anyone have any suggestions? Anyone have anything they would change? So long as I see silence in the chat, I'm going to continue reading. Domestic policies, these are much shorter. Upgraded domestic policies effectively receive the buff they would have from GSA for free, and yet it does combine with GSA. So you get market forces while on the open markets domestic policy reach 100% commerce in a city with only supermarkets. Fueling the fire, while on the imperialism domestic policy have a combined total of 40 raw resource and manufacturing improvements. Diversified, while on the urbanization, I think you guys can read this. It's just have one of each improvement available in a city, have a city reach negative 250 pollution, 5 hospitals in all cities, maximum number of each military improvement in all cities, while having a specific domestic policy. These achievements are so just the general thoughts, and then we'll move on to just kind of discussing it if you guys want to. These achievements should be mostly accessible to everyone regardless of size. Brand new nations may struggle with opulent and some of the domestic policies that require around 2,000 infra, but that's about it. All achievements aim to be offensive or proactive to get, even for defensive war policies. Divine is the only exception and is open to change. Due to the policy swap cooldowns, it'll take around a month and a half to get all of them if done perfectly. This gives people a reason to log in and do things in game for a while. It also lets you prioritize the ones you want. She tried to give most of the achievements adjective or cool sounding names. They should be something you actually want to display on your nation page. Unlocking every achievement could give you a special one with a background, achievement hunter, yada yada. It could grant a brand new gimmick war policy. Doesn't use any brand new mechanics, just ones already in place, so it would be easy to implement. But Zig, I'll counter that the idea just builds off of things that already exist. This is legitimately just expanding war policy. And it's incredibly, I would think you just link it to the achievement. She's legit, like, it's not hard. Have an achievement, you could run a true false command. Does the nation have the achievement? Yes, no. If it does, if it's true, unlocks this, and then you just use the same policy effect that's already there, same code that the devs have already had access to. And if it's not there, it's not there. I really don't. I think that would genuinely be that should be implemented. That's okay. Because I thought, see, Zig, I said you said okay. I must have just misunderstood how you ran through. Okay, my apologies. I think these policies could change how things play. I do think they would change the value of certain things, and you absolutely could have, your super policies really expand. They'll add in strategy to the war that's not already there. So, unless anyone has any reason why these wouldn't be good to implement, I think there's a stamp of approval. I see. We've got a couple people typing, so we'll see if there are objections or stamp of approval. Anything is better than, well, yep, stamp of approval there. All right, there you go. So, that idea has the hive mind's stamp of approval. Congratulations. Did anyone else have Not exactly practical to implement. Practical for whom? The devs or the players? But define what's impractical. What exact? I just want to make sure I understand. Goes against the meta. Oh, looks like Epi's hopping on. Let's see.
Hello.
Yep.
So I think alliance banks should be public information.
Okay.
I think it would reduce cheating. I think it would allow alliances to balance against each other more effectively. It would allow members to hold their government accountable, prevent corruption, which is overall good for the game's health and for retention. And there's no significant downsides to it.
Would this also come with alliance bank transactions being public?
I'm 50-50 on that. I think it could. It could also not. I think the bigger challenge is just making the overall banks public, because you could figure out transactions with something like Borgspot, which would web scrape basically every alliance bank and see the motions. So might as well make the transactions public as well.
I would just because it would be easier in terms of that rather than having to web scrape, but you would also have what was it? It's well, alliance banks open preventing cheating would help. Being able to see who deposited what and who sent out what, it would help you pinpoint a specific target more easily. In theory.
Indeed. Yep. It would also prevent tax farming and other forms of cheating.
Absolutely. Does anyone have an objection to making alliance banks public? Oh, would that come with tax records as well? Would those also be public or just
Might as well.
so everything internal, anything involving the bank, the alliance bank itself?
Sure. Well, I mean, trade history is public. Might as well. Because just as much cheating happens with trade history as it does with bank activity. Bank activity is probably higher, actually.
Well, Avatar Patrick, in theory, if for instance, let's take a random alliance. Let's say the Black Knights is fighting the Legion. If Kiwi's still here, sorry, but you guys are getting beaten up. Let's say the Legion then says, well, we want to hire ARG. If Alliance bank totals are public and the Legion's bank value decreases by $3 billion and ARG's increases by $3 billion, and you have a bot that tracks this because Borg's bot or any bot could be made or updated to track this. If ARG's bank is rising by $3 billion within a minute of the Legion's bank falling by $3 billion, the transaction is anonymous in name only. Everyone knows precisely what happened and where it went. It just now if you're doing it through YAR, if you send your money to YAR and you run it through them and you say transfer this money to so and so, then it's still anonymous. All people know is you sent money to YAR. But if you're talking about from bank to bank, then it's not transactions being public that's the issue. It's the Alliance Bank being public at all, because as soon as funds move from one place to another, it's going to be able to be logged by a bot, if not by humans, because we can't track it that quickly. But a bot will be able to web scrape every bank's public information and see. So if that's the concern, then you would have to be against public banks in general, because that's the only
Well,
way
there
to
is
make it
a
impossible to anonymously hire.
yeah. You can still hire mercs by disguising things as loans and as other sort of transactions. You can mask it in that way, and the fact that it's not official, that it is just very likely, um, does have a political impact because people can't necessarily act on something unless they're certain. Um, some groups go by reasonable suspicion, others group have to go by certainty. Um, yeah,
Well,
so I don't think this would end mercenaries at all.
I would think that the, for instance, I think that your bank balance decreasing by 3 billion and mine rising by 3 billion would fairly close to indicate, if it was a direct payment, um that's certainty. But as I mentioned, if you do it through, oh, absolutely, Zig, if you do it through YAR,
Yeah.
or if you, as mentioned, do it through a third party, that's where those businesses that nobody likes come in brilliant usefulness. That
Yeah.
you can run through quite a few. I mean, even depending upon how you want to break it up, what your prots are doing, what their allies are doing, if you're willing to pay them 10 million or whatever the fee is going to be to send it, you can very easily disguise the payment. It's just ultimately a matter of, if your concern is complete anonymity, and I'm butchering pronunciation, but that's what we do in Thalmoria. If that's your concern, then you want the status quo, because it's impossible for any change to publicity to
Another
keep it
component of
completely
the mercenary
anonymous.
thing, though, is that a lot of the mercenary leaders, I'm not necessarily saying Ah does it, but I know several of the mercenary groups do it. They will take contracts for 5 billion, 15 billion. And I've seen a few of those, and they won't tell the members. They'll just tell the members, oh, we're fighting for X reason. And then they won't distribute the money afterwards. So that leader keeps 70% or 80% of it. Yeah, there's two or three people in this game that have racked up over 45 billion by leading mercenary alliances and just not paying things to the members.
And that would completely end if well,
That it would.
not completely, but
You would
mostly.
have businesses doing like, sort of middlemen work like Yar, and you would have mercenaries that actually get paid for once, which would be neat.
And it also, you would have to understand that, well, it wouldn't completely stamp out, for instance, people not paying their mercenaries. You would have, if it was sent, if it's sent from bank to bank, direct transfer, it's going to be public knowledge. And the mercenaries are going to know, and they're going to demand their money. And if it's sent through a third party, depending upon the third party, that third party may choose to leak it or may demand a share of whatever the leader is keeping in exchange for keeping it quiet. It opens up more parties to be accountable.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I would be for that, but
Wicked. We just got to rally the forces of good against all of the super alliances who have
that does
500 billion or 300 billion in their bank.
absolutely. Well, that Zig, this is, I guess, a halfway for you, Zig. Is it's not banning offshores, but it's making them clear. Everyone will know instantly who has what money.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hide an offshore anymore. If bank information was public, it would be impossible to hide. Well, I'm sorry, Zig. You'll never agree with me then. it's impossible to hide the an alliance's money. It would not work in that scenario.
Indeed. Which I think would be a positive thing overall. Um, Also, with the mercenaries, the way I know for certain that they aren't getting paid out is pretty simple. In fact, any of you guys can do this for yourselves. If you can make friends with a few of the diplomats that are leading your spheres, you'll figure out what mercenary contracts are happening and which ones aren't. And you'll know sort of the amounts that are being spent, right? So you know the amounts that are going in. And then you simply talk to the members of the mercenary alliances. Perhaps you have friends in them. I can bet you a lot of money they're getting either a very, very small amount or nothing at all. And then you wonder where the money go. And they went to the leadership because it can't go anywhere else. Because it didn't go into their war chest. Because most of those mercenary groups require the members to get their own war chest.
And I'd like to address Huckleberry. Define vulnerable. What are you considering a vulnerable alliance?
A poor alliance, so you could just shit on someone repeatedly. The issue is you can already do that. So, for example, with Camelot's a good example versus something like TKR, right? Now, TKR has, say, 400 billion in their bank, right? And then each of these big hits on them recently probably knocked off about 60 billion each, right? 60 billion there, 60 billion there. You can keep grinding them down to nothing. Possibly, highly unlikely that you do it. Whereas with Cam, then you could hit them like 2 or 3 times for similar amounts of damage and you would collapse their economy. So you could do
This
that. But
this isn't
TKR already sort of knows. They already sort of know our bank, right? It being double the size it is now wouldn't really make a difference to them if they were going to do that. Because they can already see our general like revenue and they know when our bank started growing, which was like last year. So it was much later than them. So all this would do is it would show asymmetry in wars, right? So if something like TKR hit something like Cam, you would say, okay, one alliance has 500 billion in the bank and the other has 5 billion in the bank. There is clearly an asymmetry there, and one of these guys is dogpiling, even if the war looks even on the face of it, because one of these parties can rebuild and the other can't. So it would actually change your perspective on wars in that way as well.
and Huckleberry. We're not. Epi's idea was not to release individual, um, individual banks, I guess you would call them, or your individual what you have on hand. That that would still remain private. Uh, Granted, can you guesstimate it? Absolutely, but that's what a raid bot does now. So, and that's what a well-oriented espionage wave would tell you, anyways. And it's not killing offshores in the terms. It's not outlawing them. They'll still exist. You'll just know what they have, and may have too few munitions to go around, so they get hit potentially. But isn't that like didn't when the Johnsons hit Haunted Mansion morally, in the terms of who people disliked the least out of that war? What did that war do? Haunted Mansion came out on top morally. They lost the war by a mile, but the Johnsons was widely seen as just wailing on and expecting the other. They were essentially, it was like them being an adult and beating up a child and expecting the child to fight back like an adult. That's what the war was seen like. It's a bit harsh, but that's what the war was seen as. And so this, it'd be the same sense in that you see that they don't have any munitions to go around, or they're out of something, and you're not, we're already shaming alliances for not fighting fair. Do they care? Probably not, but that's already a thing. This would just expand that. For instance,
Yeah.
XYZ is running low on munitions, and so, you know, ABC hits them, and well, then everyone starts shaming ABC because regardless of if there was a valid war goal or not, they hit when, they take advantage of their enemy being unprepared or some other such nonsense.
Yeah. Here's a cool concept because it's worth thinking on. So TS has an alliance motto. Very few alliances have them, but they do. It's called "Money is Power." Petunia est potentia, I think, is what they have on their page. T&W is basically a balance of powers, right? So everyone's balancing against the strongest alliance in the system, not against the weakest, though it doesn't always look that way. So the richer you are in the system, the more people are going to target you, right? If you're less wealthy than everyone else, people are going to ignore you for the most part. And that's the real reason that the superpowers don't want this to happen, because they want to hide their money. They want to hide their true power. And money is power in this game. Everything revolves around it. And also, on the Castle Camelot note, if it's a tax farm, I would not be advocating for banks to be public. But hell, make it public and prove it. You can audit us, and we can audit you. And that's the beauty of public banks.
And I would just say, if Castle Camelot is a tax farm, isn't it something like 40% of them are on gray? That'd be a terrible tax farm to have. So,
Yeah.
um, I think that kind of fleshes out the idea. So I'm actually going to go ahead because we had a bit more disagreement on this one. There you go, right there in the chat. Yay or nay? What are we thinking? I see more yays than nays. We also have a shrug. So it gets the not unanimous, but majority approval stamp of approval. All right. Thank you, Epi. I think that is all for that idea. Does anyone else have anything that they feel they would like to contribute tonight? I know it's getting a bit late. For some of you, it might be getting very late. What are we thinking? Is there anything else? Zig wants to ban offshores. I know that's coming. Just lying around? No, but I could make you one. In theory, you'd have to tell me what you wanted out of it. I'd rather have a tech tree, to be completely honest. But you'll just have to let me know. Send me what you want, Zig, or just like give me the assignment details, and I can do the assignment. I don't care. Resource decay, as in they. Oh, that would be fun. I think naturally, though, you would kind of have resource decay just from um if you banned offshores, Epi, you would have a natural resource decay without having to add it as a feature, because you would have wars and pirates and things like that you could never defeat all of. And so resource decay itself isn't necessarily there or necessarily needed. You just have, that's the thing about banning offshores, is it just incentivizes people to pump money into their whatchamacallits, their members. Well, that's the ultimate problem, Huckleberry, is there's nothing that gets rid of things. That's why, like, but no, it is true. There's very little, there's no feature of the game that gets rid of something without giving you something that is player and CPU interaction. Because you're always getting something out of it. War kills a lot, but war kills a lot of what? Gasoline and munitions. That's it. What does war kill with steel and aluminum? War doesn't touch steel and aluminum. The only thing that war does to steel and aluminum is forces people to buy more planes and buy more tanks. I am not, when I go to war, I am not just throwing my steel and my aluminum into a ditch. I'm not just, it's not disappearing. It's being spent to purchase something. That is a problem. And not necessarily for that, but I'm buying them and using them for something, whether it's defense or offense. There is nothing in the game aside from attacking with your troops that evaporates resources. The only thing that takes resources out of the game is using them, and that just expands your own position to produce more. The only thing that removes resources is investment in your future production. That's it. And so without that kind of death of resources that's enabled, well, without that, there's an overabundance. Which is why resource decay, even if it was just like a percent, just like a percent of every bank in the game, just Thanos snapped. It doesn't even have to be every day. It could be every other day. I don't know how, Epi's done more looking at it than I have because that's his idea. But you would have a decay. So I don't know. The perks I know are meant to be kind of like a tech tree or whatever. I still think a real tech tree would be better. not necessarily fully advanced, but you get the point. Like, no, they're not, but I've spoken with Pre and I've been given an idea of what's been discussed and proposed, or at least what was original, what the base was, and I highly doubt they've changed it much. So, um, I would support a tech tree over that. Something that's expanding casualties, expanding damage over time, but you pick. There's far too little of picking available. You would have to pick to go down a specific route of benefit or whatever. And so that's just my opinion. I think that would go better than perks. But the other thing is, I would love to see disease actually used for something. I would absolutely love to see disease used for something. And my idea would never happen because it would require Alex to actually do work, and we all know where that goes. But I would love to see like potential, here's an epidemic, and during war your disease goes up, and if your opponent have different disease types, I wrote some, and you guys can tell me how maniacally insane this is or not. Let me see if I can find the ancient, and it is how long ago was this? Good grief. Holy cow. How old? April. This is from April. That was actually part of it, is if you have a disease, every time you engage in a ground battle with somebody else, you have a percentage chance of passing that disease on. So really it would just be something you would have categories like, virus, bacteria, parasite, just the three basic disease categories. And you would have immunity. No, I would not go there. Thank you. I would not go there. Absolutely not. That project would not be seen. Um the you would have immunity statistics. It could be nationwide, it could be in your cities. It doesn't really matter either way. It would probably be nationwide, but and the point of this was actually to expand kind of spies, what they can be used for. Now, it would create a new weapon, or more accurately, I guess, a new spy attack. You would be able to create bioweapons, but they could only be delivered via an espionage. Either actual mechanic or a special event, doesn't matter. I would think it would be an actual mechanic, because asking Alex to do something once would be incredible. Yes, Epi, but that's what this game is about, is breaking the Geneva Convention. And so bioweapon, they would not affect infrastructure, but they would automatically, upon activation, contaminate 10% of the population in that city. Hospitals, different projects raise your immunity. Immunity decays over time, but it does have a minimum cap that it can decay to. And the lower your disease rate is, the lower your disease rate, the higher your minimum cap is. So it's, and then infected. Oh, it's absolutely too ambitious. This is just me like wishing it would never be implemented, but this is me wishing. So infected cities would have a specific. I'm not going to read you all of it. I'm just going to paraphrase, but would have a certain chance to infect an additional population, or cure, or just a percentage chance that nothing happens. And so everybody would have a private tracker on their own nation that only they could see, kind of like how only you can see, with VIP or whatever, how many nations have visited you, whatever. And you can see what percentage of your population is infected. Whatever percentage. Now, this is where it could go twofold, is you could either have it be the percentage of the population infected correlates to a decrease in the cap of how many soldiers your nation can attack with. So, for instance, 5% of the population infected means you can only attack with 95% of your soldiers. And then on defense, 100% of your soldiers participate in defense, but 6 soldiers fight at half value. So anyways, there's a whole bunch of different stuff here. And it would also actually affect population in terms of there'd be chances that they die. There would be the thing that was really important was the contagiousness, the contagion. There would be a percentage chance per ground attack, per spy attack, per trades, and yes, the all important per baseball game. So if your nation is playing baseball with a nation that is currently facing a disease, you could catch the disease. And then there was like kind of a special advanced disease labeled a plague that had additional contagiousness, and but it was fun to write. I know it'll never happen, but it was fun to write. So natural disasters, those could be fun too, but you'd have to figure out how they happen. How are you going to? Yes, that was part of it. It's trades, ground attacks, spy attacks, and diseases. Or excuse me, not diseases, baseball games. Natural disasters, you'd have to figure out how you wanted them to be affected. Do you want them to be affected by alliance? Do you want them to be affected by in-game continent? Do you want them to be affected at complete random? And then how bad do you want them to be? The problem is that just like any sort of disease update, the same thing that happened to most of the updates that the dev team talks about, they disappear. The problem with natural disasters is the same idea, is the same problem with my idea. You're asking for addition of an entirely new section of code, as well as probably rewriting old code. And Alex has said, screw it, I'm not doing it. I don't care if you want it or not. I refuse. Partially understandable, but it's what he said. So unless it ties in. Now, the idea about war policy and domestic policy, as said earlier, incredibly easy to add, and I see no reason why it wouldn't be, because it follows every single thing already in existence. Showing bank balances, making that public, bank transactions, even tax records. That's incredibly, well, it's not incredibly easy, but it's not the most difficult of things for them to do. Just it's really just a rewriting of the code that makes the bank tab private. All you do is change it so that everybody gets the same role as average members, in that they can see bank balance, but they can't withdraw or deposit. It'd take a little modification, but the existing system's already there. Natural disasters? Potentially. It requires some new code, though, and that might get problematic when it interacts with what is already in the game. My thing? Absolutely not. Would never happen in a million years, because it'd require rewriting of a good part of the game. So that's where we're at. Is there anything else that anyone has to suggest, or I missed, that we should cover? Anything at all? It's amazing how everyone here already has the Lysandite roll. Anything at all? Hi Dude stepped down from the dev team. Zig, is this true? Have you replaced the legendary Hi Dude? This looks like yes. Zig has replaced the legendary Hi Dude. You heard it here. The dev team considers Zig equal to Hi Dude in every way. Yes, perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Well, thank you to the 9 core listeners of this channel. That was the first thing they told you. You just didn't remember. Solid move. Just ignore it. Just, yeah, why not? It's the first thing they told me. I'm going to ignore it, because who needs to know? So, this about covers, I think, the evening. We're going on just 7 minutes shy of 2 hours. So, thank you all for fun time. I had fun. I hope you did too. We got to talk about some solid ideas, and hopefully we can push for, I don't know about the natural disasters, but I do think public banks and particularly the updated policies would be implementable. It did nobody said Avatar Patrick. He's just not there anymore. So new achievements, but those aren't necessarily like, that's just what we call busy work. And it's not in the sense that you're giving it to the dev team to keep busy. It's in the sense that the dev team is doing it to pretend they're busy. So that's how I look at, achievement stuff. So with that, I think I'm going to close out the night. Remember, I am absolutely happy to be present for any of your business questions, because it's my most favorite thing to do in this game. I am opening up again a checking service. If you're interested in what that looks like, DMs are available. It's one short message away. And in the future, there will be, whether it's by next show, I don't know. It might be. It's going to be a busy few weeks until then, so I can't guarantee it. But by the show after next, there will be an entertainment complex, I'm hoping, on Orbis. I'll leave it up to you to determine what that means, but that's my goal. Have a fantastic evening, ladies and gentlemen. And, well, it doesn't spin for me, Zig, so I don't know if that's just... Is it spinning for you? It's not spinning. Okay. But it gives you flashbacks. I remember. All right, let's get ready to go ahead and drop the outro. And again, anything business related, I'm your man. Thank you all again, and let's play the theme song. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Have a fantastic evening. I'll see y'all in 2 weeks.